and glittering coaching resume. Currently head coach, USC men's basketball. Of course, former coach of the Kings and the Warriors. It's a pleasure to welcome back to Sactown Sports, Eric Musselman. How are you, Coach?
I'm doing great, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm wearing my San Diego Sales T-shirt today in honor of you and your father. So
You got to be kidding me.
No, right, Drapes? I do. I have it on. Right?
Oh, my gosh. That's
he got it on.
What a great look. It's funny. I went to a beach party the other night here in Manhattan Beach, and I strolled down there. I met my wife on the Strand, and she looked at me and goes, "What are you doing wearing a San Diego Sales shirt?"
Nice. That's tremendous.
I mean, they only lasted 6 games.
Yes, I know.
And that was the year of the NBA-ABA merger. And the owner of the Sales actually found out through a woman he was dating that worked in the NBA league office that the Sales were not going to be part of the 4 teams that went into the merger. And so the guy folded the team. My dad left a great job at the University of Minnesota. He lasted 6 games. The Virginia Squires then called my dad, brought him to Virginia. My mom said, "I'm not leaving La Jolla, California." She never left the whole since that day.
Wow.
No way my parents did get divorced.
Wow. Already we got things happening here with Coach Eric Musselman. Hey, wanted to ask you about Mason Jones. I know you got a lot going on in Summer League. I'm not sure how much of any particular team you get to see, but how's Mason Jones coming along as a pro? How proud are you of his progress?
Yeah, super proud of Mason. I mean, a lot of people don't understand when he was young. He was heavy. I looked at him the other day. Yesterday it was actually, and I couldn't believe it when he walked out of the locker room. His eating habits and his lifestyle habits right now are insane. He watches everything he eats. He's on a very, very strict diet. He's in the best shape of his life. He's a dynamic scorer. I mean, he led the country in free throws attempted when he played for me at Arkansas the one year I was with him for those 30 games. And I didn't recruit him. He, along with Isaiah Joe, who's playing with Oklahoma City Thunder, both those 2 players I inherited from Mike Anderson, and 2 guys that eventually became pros. But Mason is a great scorer. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's a guy that is up on the bench cheering. He's never afraid of big moments. He made some big plays yesterday, and then New York, had a great side out of bounds play, and they got the ball downhill to win the game. But it was one of the better Summer League games that I've seen.
Hey, Coach Kyle Draper here. I met you yesterday before the game. We chopped it up a little bit. I do play-by-play for the Kings. Appreciate you jumping on with us. Another guy you might be familiar with is Keon Ellis. Went to Alabama. What do you remember about preparing to face him and going against him as a college coach?
Yeah, Keon, is a guy that can really score the ball. He's been well coached. He's a player that I think his game has grown, since he was at Alabama, but he was one of the better SEC players. He was a guy that you really, really had to prepare for on both sides of the ball. He's got the ability to be a good defender as well with his length. I think he's got a really bright future. A lot of these guys, as you can see in Summer League, it really comes down to, opportunity. And Keon's a guy at 6'3" that, can pass the ball a little bit. He can create steals. He's a good athlete. And he's still a really, really young player at just 24 years old.
Mm-hmm. Is maybe working on his handle one of the benefits for him in Summer League? I mean, he just was a breakout player for the Kings last year, running a little point this year. I mean, is that a situation where the Kings look at that and say, man, if he can become even better with his handle, I mean, the potential for him expands. Does that kind of get to the heart of why we have Summer League for some of these guys, Coach?
Yeah, I think if a player doesn't have the ability from his current organization to work on some different things, I think you're losing the benefit of summer league. I mean, I think that there's some organizations that really, really go into summer league with a great plan. And they put players in a position, one, to test them, two, to evaluate them. And then there's others that are just, you can tell by the way the team's put together, or you can tell by the way that it's being coached, that maybe don't have as good a plan. And certainly what you want to do with a young player like Keon is put the ball in his hands and let him be more of a decision maker and let him expand his game. He didn't really play point, when he played at Bama. And so having that ball in his hands a little bit more certainly is the next growth. Because when you're 6'3" at that level, you got to be able to, be a combo guard and not just strictly an off guard.
Yeah.
Hey, Coach, one of the things we were talking about earlier this show, and I'd like for you to speak on it, having been a college coach and an NBA coach, we see college players who have tremendous success, but it doesn't translate to the NBA. What's the gap, I guess, in between the style of play now between college and the NBA? Is it a farther leap that guys have to make if they want to be successful on the big level?
I think so. I think, and there's a lot of misleading things. For instance, I'm going to show my age, but before the NBA G League, there was the old CBA.
Yeah.
And when I coached in the CBA, there was 12 NBA active roster spots. Now you have two ways, Exhibit 10s, rosters have expanded. The game has been semi-diluted. Now you have, basically 30 G League teams, as opposed to, again, I look back not that long ago, Chris Finch was coaching in the G League when I was in it. Nick Nurse was coaching in the G League when I was in it. The Austin Toros coach was Quinn Snyder. There was only like 12 teams. And when you only have 12 teams compared to 30, the players are dissolute. Right now, they're not in reality sometimes. They'll put up decent numbers in the G League. The G League is so watered down right now that you can't get a real true gauge. Certainly, there's always going to be players that come up through that system. But to be an impact player and to be a guy that lasts in the league, like it's super hard for college players to understand. It's just not about making a roster. It's about turning that into a second and a third contract. And sometimes players that are playing like in the Vegas Summer League, they don't understand. You're not just auditioning for your team that you're playing on. You're auditioning for all the other teams in the NBA because all the scouts are there. They're evaluating. They're trying to, if a guy gets cut, do we bring him to vet camp? Is he a guy we want to put on a two-way or an Exhibit 10? It's really hard to get college players to understand that. But I do think as a college coach, your job or your obligation, especially if you have an NBA talent that comes to you, is how do you maximize the potential, and then how do you squeeze everything out of him, and then prepare him for how to practice, for how to be on time, for how to be a true professional. Because oftentimes with those guys that are between the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th guy, a lot of times your professionalism and the way that you conduct yourself in the locker room will often dictate how long your career lasts.
Catching up with Eric Musselman on Sactown Sports. Coach, to that point, when you talk about players and how that sometimes they're not really having a grip on their potential reality of the NBA and things of that nature, how much has your NBA experience helped you be a good recruiter at the college level? That is, prospects understand when you talk about their NBA future, you know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think it's really helped a lot. I think I look at my time at Nevada, and I think there was a little bit of an instant credibility with certain players like Cameron Oliver, who was from Oakland but spent the majority of his life in Sacramento. Cameron was the second player that we got a commitment from, and he talked about the first NBA game he ever went to. I was coaching the Warriors, so
wow.
That helped land one of Sacramento's more talented players that year. And then Lindsey Drew was our first recruit at Nevada. And Lindsey's father, Larry, obviously been with many NBA teams, has been an NBA head coach. And without those two players, who knows, maybe I get fired after year 2 or 3 at Nevada. But those two incoming freshmen, because of my background, helped us land those two. And then certainly, you know, when a family turns over their son to you, like Kareem and Rona Moody did in regards to their son Moses Moody, that's a big leap of faith, because I had only been at Arkansas 1 year, and in that 1 year, that's when Mason Jones had played for us. That was the year that COVID shut everything down, so I really hadn't proven anything at Arkansas. But because of the background, Moses Moody's parents kind of trusted that, and it certainly helped last year. We had 3 players that were one-and-done players, and Anthony Black, who was a lottery pick to Orlando, and Jordan Walsh went in the early second to the Celtics, and Nick Smith was a first-round pick with Charlotte. So
Wow.
I think it resonates with a lot of people, and then the people it doesn't resonate with, they go somewhere else.
Yes, that's how it is these days, right? You know, that's how it is. Coach, you're with USC now, and you know, USC, a heavy presence out here at Summer League with Boogie Ellis on the Kings, Isaiah Collier out here, and of course, Bronny James. Losing those 3 players, and I know it's going into your first year. Just what do you make of your guard rotation, and now having 3 USC players at the guard position trying to make their way here in the NBA Summer League?
Yeah, well, I certainly wish I had. You know, we have 1 returning player.
Oh man!
and so we went out and actually got 13 new players. We decided that it was going to be a complete, you know, flip of the roster. And I mentioned, you know, when I was incoming at Arkansas, the prior coach had left us with 2 NBA talented players in Jones and Isaiah Joe. So, you know, when a player has eligibility and you get a new job and then he decides to go to the NBA, like I talked to Isaiah Collier's parents last night, you know, and we laughed. I told him he came to my first meeting, how respectful he was. He came to my press conference, and I said, but I couldn't have a conversation with him and tell him, or even try to tell him to come back to USC. He was a bona fide first-round pick. When a player is in that particular position, he's got to go to the NBA. You cannot hold the player back. You cannot do anything other than push him out the door when they're a bona fide first-round pick. Now, if a player is a second-round pick, or maybe a non-draftable player, then you have to have those conversations and go through what could possibly happen if you leave school early, what those pros and cons can be. And we've had players like Ricky Council leave early, but then Ricky turned it into a great decision by playing so well with the 76ers this past season. And then we've had other guys that did the same thing and stayed and worked on their game, like Caleb and Cody Martin. One of them got drafted, one of them didn't. And the year before, it was the exact opposite. Everybody thought Caleb was going to get drafted and Cody wouldn't. And so you just never know how it's going to play out. But a lot of times what players don't understand is if you can refine your game, regardless of age, if you're ready and you've covered up some of your holes and improved, it oftentimes allows you to have a longer career. And I think Cody and Caleb are going to be great examples, as will Ricky Council to some degree as well.
Speaking of USC, Eric Musselman is our guest here. One of the great players in USC history, as you know, is now Sacramento King. Kings shoot a lot of threes. DeMar DeRozan does not. But, Coach, can he help them get better looks at the threes that they are getting and that they are taking?
I think so. I mean, you know, DeMar is a true pro. He loves to work. He's going to make teams better. He's got really good shot selection. You know, you're talking about a guy who's 6'6", 220. He's got a great build. You can do some things defensively with him. Switch because he can guard guys maybe that are a little bit taller because he is so strong. But you just look at his 48%, field goal shooter. Obviously the three ball is not what he's, really known for. But he's a great mid-range shooter, and he's made so many clutch shots. And so you add him with some of the young nucleus stars that the Kings have, and I think it's a great fit because you're getting a pro's pro. You look at the scoring averages of what DeMar has done, and I think it's a great fit and a great addition to their team.
Hey, Coach, how much do you keep an eye on your former clubs, Golden State, Sacramento, and just if you could speak to, the Kings finally seem to have gotten things turned around here.
Yeah, no, a lot of the people that worked for the Warriors when I was there, I still keep in really close contact. Raymond Ritter was a PR guy there, and I remember because I was a rookie NBA head coach, I used to go to Raymond and say, "Hey, Raymond, can you, when the game ends, between the time the final buzzer ends and the time I have to go up on the podium, can you please give me a list of like 10 bullet points to try to help me control what is coming out of my mouth?" And Raymond is still there. Eric Housen is still there. Yeah. It's this really cool thing that Eric Housen, the equipment manager, still to this day will send me a care package of Warriors like workout gear and stuff. And that's how classy the Warriors are. I mean, I haven't been the coach there for a long time. I only lasted 2 years there. But their ownership, I'm really close with, the owner's sons, and they just had a lot of guys. Mike Dunleavy had played for me, and is now the GM. So I'm really close with them. Obviously, Mike Brown, having played at the University of San Diego, that's also where I went. Mm-hmm. There's a little University of San Diego mafia nobody knows about, and it's Mike Brown. It's Chris Grant, who used to be the GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's David Fizdale, who's been a head coach with Memphis and the Knicks. It's a whole group of University of San Diego ties, and we're a close-knit group. I promise you that.
Coach, we appreciate your time. Before we let you go, I have to tell you, every time I see the great Hubie Brown, I think of you because I remember, and I'm wondering if you could tell this story. You told us once during a radio interview, you were on Hubie's staff and you guys were playing overseas somewhere and you did a walkthrough in a parking lot with like a watermelon or something. Is it?
That's one of the greatest stories ever. So here's, I don't know how much time I got. I'll try.
Plenty of time. Plenty of time.
So Hubie, it's a Nike All-Star team. We're playing in Limoges, France. And at that time, the Limoges team had won like a World Cup or whatever in FIBA. So the CBA league office calls me. They said, "Hey, Hubie's going to coach the team. You're going to put the team together, and you're going to be Hubie's assistant coach." And I was super young at the time, so I called Coach Brown. "Hey, Coach Brown, what do you want in this roster?" I'll never forget this. He goes, "I want the very, very best rebounding small forward that you can find." And I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like, I'm thinking to myself. And so I call him back and I give him these guys, and he does the rebounds per minute. And he goes, I told you. And then he starts going off on me and he says, I've coached Dominique Wilkins and I've coached Bernard King. Those guys were NBA great defensive rebounding small forwards. And I'm thinking in my head, man, we're a CBA team. Like, I'm not going to be able to find Dominique Wilkins and Bernard King. But back, that was how the roster was trying to be built. But back to your story. So we're in Limoges, France. We're playing the third game in 3 days. We can't go to a gym. We have a game at about 2:00 in the afternoon. We have breakfast at 9:30. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, we got to go through this Greek team's offensive sets." And I said, "All right, Coach, well, let's do it here in the ballroom, like right where we're eating." And he goes, No. We need regulation, lane lines, 3. So I'm like, "Coach, how are we going to do it?" And he says, "Hey, get the tape from the trainer, and I want you to go outside, and I want you to put a half court out there." and make sure the dimensions are exactly right. So I go outside. It's like 100 degrees outside. Humidity. I lay the cord out. He comes walking out and he says, "All right, where's the ball?" I go, "Coach, I don't have a ball in my back pocket." Like, so he says, "Hey, go back in the eating room and grab a grapefruit." So the grapefruit was the ball. Hubie, as we're walking through the plays, Hubie is telling the guys to put more zip on the pass. So probably 15 minutes. Now, look, a grapefruit, when it starts squirting, that thing gets in your eyes and it's really sore.
Yeah.
And so the juice started going everywhere. It was in guys' eyes. Darren Morningstar, who was one of the players, he called me over and he said, "Muss, this guy's crazy." But Hubie's one of the guys that, like, to me, is the most legend of all legends. I've never been around a coach that's a better X and O coach. I told our team when he was coaching Memphis, because of this experience of being around him, I told our staff before we played the Grizzlies, I said, if we're not up 9 or 10 points with 2 minutes to go, we cannot beat Hubie because he's too good late game.
That's tremendous. Coach, congratulations on the new gig. We hope you have a great summer. Thank you very much for your time. We enjoyed it. Hope you did too.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, take care.
All right, Coach.
Eric.
Take care now.
That story, I heard that story once before, but it's better than I remember. That's
tremendous. A pretty good story.
Yeah. All right. When we come back, Parody or Dynasties, which is better?